The first thing that went wrong was the road. But Mara didn't understand that until later. Until she had time to replay every decision, every turn, every joke Jonah made to keep the mood light, and every time Caleb said not far in a voice that sounded like it was trying to convince himself. At the time, it felt normal enough. They left the city after lunch, chased the last clean stretch of highway into a mess of rural routes and half-maintained buckruds. The sky was a flat winter white, and the trees grew thicker with every mile. The farther they drove, the quieter it became. That was the point, Caleb had said. A reset. A weekend away from notifications and deadlines and the constant, itchy sense that life was something happening to you rather than something you were steering. Mara had wanted that. She wanted to believe that if you drove far enough, you could outrun the shape of your own thoughts. The GPS lost signal 23 minutes after the last gas station. It didn't die dramatically. It didn't sputter. The map simply stopped updating, the blue dot hovering in place while the car continued forward. Then the route line vanished. Then the screen dimmed and displayed a gray message, searching for network. Jonah, sprawled in the back seat with a bag of chips in his lap, laughed. "We're pioneers now. Next stop, dysentery." Ullaz didn't smile. She sat on the other side of the back seat, hoodie cinched tight, her knees drawn up, watching the forest slide past the window like a film played too slowly. The trees were mostly pines, tall and straight, packed close together. The ground beneath them was bare in a way that felt staged. No mess, no undergrowth, no fallen branches. Just trunks and shadow and the occasional pale rock protruding like a knuckle. "How much farther?" she asked. Caleb, in the passenger seat, turned his phone over in his hands like it might wake up if he stared hard enough. "Not far." Mara glanced at him. "You said that 10 minutes ago." Caleb's smile flickered into place, brittle. "Remote cabins are remote." Jonah crunched another chip. "He booked it on some murder cabin website, didn't he?" Caleb's jaw tightened. It was a normal listing. "On what site?" Mara asked. Caleb hesitated, only a beat, but Mara felt it, felt the small pause like a pebble in her shoe. "One of those off-grid rental places." Ullaz's eyes didn't leave the trees. "Do they vet the cabins?" Jonah snorted. "Do they vet the murderers?" "Jonah," Mara said sharply. He held up his hands. Fine, no murder jokes, just very haunted vibes out here." The road narrowed. Asphalt broke into gravel. Gravel softened into dirt that looked damp even though there was no rain. The car's tires made a hush-hush sound, like they were rolling over ash. Branches began to brush the sides of the car, a gentle tapping that at first felt like nothing. Then Mara noticed the rhythm, steady, evenly spaced, like footsteps keeping pace with them. She told herself that was stupid. Branches didn't coordinate. Still, her shoulders stayed tight. The gate appeared without warning around a bend. A rusted metal bar stretched across the road, sagging slightly in the center. A sign hung crookedly from chains. "No entry, maintenance closed." Beneath it, the metal had been scraped so thoroughly that it shone dull silver where letters used to be. Someone had erased the rest. "This feels official," Mara said, slowing. Jonah leaned forward. "Officially stupid." Caleb was already undoing his soot bolt. "This is it." Ullaz's voice was small. "It says no entry." Caleb opened the car door. Cold air poured in, sharp and clean and wrong. He walked to the gate and lifted it with both hands. It rose too easily. The rust looked ancient, but the hinge moved like it had been oiled. No screech, no protest. The bar lifted smooth as a lever. Mara stared. "That's lucky," Jonah offered, forcing a grin. Caleb held the bar up. Mara drove through. As soon as the car passed, Caleb let the gate drop behind them. It didn't clang. It thudded, heavy and final, the sound of a door you weren't meant to reopen. Ullaz twisted to look through the rear window. That sounded like it locked. Mara checked her mirror. The gate was already smaller than it should have been. The road behind it looked narrower, darker, like the forest had leaned in to hide it. For 1 second, Mara had the thought that if she stopped, got out and ran back, she'd find no gate at all, just trees pressed close and an unbroken wall of bark. She forced herself to keep driving. Beyond the gate, the forest changed. Not dramatically. Not in a way you could point to and say there. It was more like the atmosphere had a new rule. The air felt thicker, as if the car had entered a place that didn't circulate the same air as the rest of the world. Mara's ears popped, like descending underwater, even though the road climbed gently upward. The dirt track curved in tight arcs with no landmarks, no side roads, no signs. The same trees, the same spacing, the same shadows. Jonah tried to keep it light. At least when we get murdered, it'll be symmetrical. Ullaz didn't respond. Caleb watched the road with too much focus, as if he recognized something only he could see. Then the cabin appeared. It wasn't at the end of a driveway. There was no gradual transition. One moment they were in forest, and the next the trees fell back into a perfect circle, revealing a clearing of bare dirt like a stage. The cabin sat in the center, dark wood against pale ground, one story with a sagging porch. The windows were black, reflecting nothing. Even the sky didn't seem to sit in the glass. Mara parked and killed the engine. Silence settled hard. No birds, no insects, no wind. Their breathing sounded too loud, like it didn't belong. Jonah let out a low whistle. Okay, yep, this is definitely where the protagonist makes a bad choice. Caleb forced a laugh and got out, moving quickly like if he acted normal enough, the place would become normal. Mara stepped out last. The air smelled dry and old, faintly sweet, like paper stored too long in a sealed box. The clearing felt slightly warmer than the forest, but not in a comforting way. More like the warmth of a room where too many people had stood without moving. Ullaz lingered by the car, eyes fixed on the tree line. It's like the woods stop here. Mara followed her gaze. The forest around the clearing formed a solid wall. No trails, no gaps, no inviting path, just trees packed close like teeth. Caleb unlocked the cabin door with a key from a small lockbox. The lock clicked open like it was new. Inside, the cabin was clean, not lived-in clean, untouched clean, no dust on the shelves, no footprints on the floor. The air was stale, faintly sweet. There was a lantern on the table and a folded note beside it, neat as a greeting card. Caleb read aloud, voice too loud in the quiet. Welcome. Respect the land. Keep food sealed. Do not go beyond the tree line after sunset. Enjoy your stay. Jonah lifted his eyebrows. That's cozy. Elise's hands curled into the sleeves of her hoodie. Why would it say that? Liability, Jonah said quickly. People wander off, bears, cougars, whatever. Mara looked at the windows. From inside, the tree line looked darker, closer. The glass seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. Her reflection was faint, distorted, as if the cabin couldn't decide whether she was really there. They unpacked. They did normal things. Mara lined groceries on the counter. Jonah carried sleeping bags. Caleb stacked firewood. Elise drifted from room to room like she didn't want to stop moving because stopping meant listening to the silence. Time did something strange. Mara checked her phone while putting it on airplane mode. 5 p.m. She set it down. Later, after they'd carried in the last bag and Jonah had made a joke about the last bag you carry before your doom, she checked again. 5 p.m. She frowned, tapped the screen, turned airplane mode off and on, as if that would kick time back into motion. Still 5 p.m. Jonah noticed her expression. What? Nothing, Mara lied. Phones being weird. Outside, they built a fire anyway. The act of it felt important, like a ritual that could anchor them. The flames came reluctantly, licking at the kindling like they weren't sure they were allowed. When the fire finally caught, the sound was oddly muted. Crackling, yes, but as if heard through a wall. Smoke rose straight up and didn't drift. Caleb stared at it. No wind, he said. Elise's voice was soft. Or no outside. Jonah tried to laugh. Okay, now you're doing the horror movie thing. Elise didn't look at him. It feels like a boundary. Mara watched the tree line. The forest stood still, branches unmoving. The shadows between the trunks looked too deep, like openings. They ate quickly, hot dogs, soup warmed in a pot. marshmallows that tasted faintly of something bitter beneath the sugar. Jonah tried to keep the conversation going, telling stories about stupid trips, dumb college nights, times they'd all been together and safe. But his words kept running into the silence and dying. The sky dimmed, too fast. One moment it was gray-blue, the next it was bruised purple, and then night. Not gradual, not earned. It snapped into place like a switch flipped. Elise stood so abruptly her chair tipped back. Inside, now. A branch snapped at the tree line. All four of them turned. Something moved between the trees, a shift, a tall outline, too thin and too still. It didn't charge. It didn't retreat. It simply adjusted its stance as if it had realized they were looking. Caleb lifted his chin and called, louder than he meant, "Hey, this is private property." No answer. The shape remained. Jonah's voice cracked, probably a deer. It was not deer-shaped. Mara's stomach dropped into cold. "Inside," she said, and this time her voice didn't sound like a suggestion. It sounded like a rule. They hurried into the cabin. Jonah kicked dirt over the fire, but it didn't hiss the way it should. The embers dimmed reluctantly, like they didn't want to die. The cabin door shut behind them with a heavy, final sound that made Mara's chest ache. Caleb locked it, then checked the windows. Mara watched him do it, and something inside her thought, locks are for people. They tried to settle. Jonah insisted they play cards. Elise sat on the couch, knees pulled up, shaking. Mara poured water into cups and realized her hands were trembling. Then the knocking began. 3 taps on the front door. Tap, tap, tap. Not loud, not urgent. Polite. Elise made a sound like a swallowed scream. Jonah stood halfway up. "Who the hell?" Caleb grabbed his arm. "Don't." The taps came again, a little slower, like whoever was outside had learned patience. Tap, tap, tap. Then a pause. Then a voice, soft and careful, slipped through the cabin walls like smoke. "Mara." Her blood turned to ice. The voice didn't sound human, not fully. It sounded like something repeating a word it had heard once, tasting it, adjusting the syllables until it fit its mouth. "Elise." Elise collapsed forward, crying into her sleeves. "Jonah." Jonah's face drained of color. "No, no, no, no." "Caleb." Caleb's eyes went wide, wild. Mara realized with sudden clarity that Caleb looked guilty, not just scared, but guilty, like he had expected this. Mara's voice came out as a whisper. "How does it know us?" The voice outside replied, as if it had heard her thoughts. "We listened." The knocking resumed. "Open." The walls creaked, not like settling wood, like something shifting its weight, leaning. Caleb yanked the flashlight from the counter and aimed it at the window. The beam cut across the room, hit the glass, and spilled into the clearing. And stopped at the tree line, as if the darkness there was solid. Something stood beyond the beam. Tall, thin, arms hanging too low, head tilted slightly, curious. Mara lifted her phone and opened the camera app, hands shaking. She aimed it at the window and zoomed. The screen showed the clearing, grainy and gray. The trees. The darkness. Nothing else. But with her own eyes, she could still see the outline at the edge of the clearing, still watching. "It's not showing up," Elise whispered through tears. Jonah backed away from the door as if distance mattered. That's not." From deeper in the forest came a murmur, many voices overlapping, a chant without words. Not loud, but rhythmic, insistent, like a crowd speaking in unison behind a closed door. Caleb's breathing turned ragged. "This can't be real." The voice outside spoke again, closer now. "You came." The door handle turned. Slowly. The lock held, but the wood around it bent inward like it was softening, yielding. As if the cabin itself was deciding that resistance was pointless. Mara stared at the lantern. Its flame flickered once, twice, then steadied in a low, nervous glow. The walls pulsed. Not visibly, but Mara felt it, a gentle throb in the air, like standing too close to a speaker. Elise began to scream. Jonah covered his ears. Mara couldn't move. Caleb whispered, "No, no, no," like a prayer. The door opened. Not forced. Not broken. It simply opened, as if someone had turned an invisible key. The thing stepped inside. Up close, it wasn't a monster in a clean, cinematic way. It was an error, a shape that had tried to imitate a person and failed in all the subtle places. Its skin looked too dry, stretched thin over joints that bent wrong. Its face had eyes, a nose, a mouth, assembled correctly but without understanding. The smile was too wide, the teeth too even. It smelled like dry earth and old leaves sealed in a box. Behind it, more shapes crowded the doorway, outlines pressing close, watching without blinking. "You stayed," the thing said softly. Its voice was calmer now, more confident, like it had practiced. Mara's throat barely worked. "What do you want?" The thing tilted its head, as if considering whether she'd ask the right question. "Names," it said. "Warmth, place." Caleb stumbled backward, hitting the wall. This is my fault." Mara snapped her head toward him. "What?" Caleb's eyes filled. "The listing, the cabin, I found it in a forum. It said it was cheap because it was special. It said you just had to follow the rules. I thought it was a joke." Jonah stared at him like he'd never seen him before. "You didn't tell us you found it on a forum." Caleb's voice broke. "I didn't think." The thing smiled wider, pleased, like a teacher watching students understand a lesson too late. The lantern went out. Darkness swallowed the cabin. Mara felt something brush her cheek, cold, dry fingers, or maybe it was just air. Elise sobbed somewhere to her right. Jonah cursed, voice shaking. Caleb made a sound like he was choking. Then there was a sensation Mara couldn't explain, not being touched, but being recognized. Like something had pressed its attention into her, seeing every soft, private part of her mind. The thing whispered, close enough that Mara felt the shape of the word on her ear. "We listened." And then she wasn't sure if she was standing, or lying down, or falling. Mara woke to birdsong. For a long, confused moment, relief flooded her. Morning, normal morning sounds, sunlight. The nightmare had burned itself out. Then she realized she was barefoot. She stood on cold dirt in the clearing. Her socks were gone. Her shoes, too. The air was bright and still. The sky a pale sheet. The cabin was gone. Not destroyed, not burned, not collapsed. Simply gone. The clearing was empty except for the fire pit ring. Still there, a circle of stones like an outline of where warmth used to be. Mara's heart hammered. Jonah, Elise. Jonah stood several feet away, staring at his hands. He flexed his fingers as if unsure they belonged to him. His lips moved silently, forming words that didn't become sound. Elise knelt in the dirt, rocking back and forth. She was whispering something, apologies, Mara realized. I'm sorry. Mara spun, searching the clearing. Caleb. No Caleb. No car. No road. Just trees pressed in on all sides, closer than they had been last night. Not by inches, by yards. The tree line that had been a boundary now felt like a wall pressed against their faces. Jonah looked up slowly. His eyes were red-rimmed and unfocused. We have to go, he said, voice thin. We have to go now. They tried. They picked a direction and walked into the forest. The trees swallowed them instantly. The light dimmed as if the canopy thickened with every step. The air became colder, heavier, full of a faint, sweet smell that made Mara think of paper rotting. They walked for what felt like an hour. Then the trees opened into the clearing again. Mara stopped so abruptly she nearly fell. No. Jonah spun in place, panic rising. No. Elise's whispering turned frantic. We're not supposed to leave. We're not supposed to. Mara grabbed Elise's shoulders. Stop it, we're leaving. Elise's eyes were wide, wet, unfixed. It knows our names. We don't answer, Mara said. though she wasn't sure who she was convincing anymore. They tried another direction. Again, the forest looped them back. A third time. A fourth. Time slipped. Mara checked her phone. No signal, of course, but worse, the time still read 5 p.m. The same number, stubborn and mocking in daylight. Jonah started laughing. It began as a breathy, disbelieving chuckle and built into something jagged. "It's stuck," he said. "We're stuck in 512. We're stuck in 512 forever." Myra slapped him, not hard, but enough to snap him back for a second. "Stop." He stared at her, shocked, then his expression crumpled. "I can hear it," he whispered. "When you're not talking, I can hear it in the trees." At first, Myra thought he meant wind, but there was no wind. Still, when she stood perfectly still and held her breath, she realized there was a sound under the silence, a faint murmur like distant conversation behind walls. Not words, not quite. A pattern, a rhythm. The chant. From last night. Always there. They grew hungry, thirsty. Their mouths tasted like pennies. Elise refused to eat anything from the woods. Jonah tried, once pulling berries from a vine that had not been there before. He chewed and gagged and spat them out, sobbing. "They taste like my tongue," he said, voice breaking. "They taste like blood." They found water in a hollow in a tree, perfectly still, reflecting their faces too clearly. Mara drank anyway. The water was cold and sweet, and afterwards her stomach twisted with nausea and a strange, crawling warmth. Elise began to forget things. At first it was small, where she'd set her jacket, Jonah's middle name, the name of the highway they'd taken. Then larger, the city they lived in, the job she'd quit last month, the reason she was always anxious in crowds. Myra watched it happen like watching someone fade from a photograph. Jonah got worse in a different way. He became convinced the trees were copying them. "Look," he whispered, pointing at the trunks. "They're spaced like we're spaced. They're standing like we stand. They're learning." Myra snapped, "Stop talking like that." But she couldn't fully deny it. Sometimes she would glance at the tree line and swear she saw a shape that looked like Jonah, his posture, his slouch, except too tall and too still. Sometimes she would hear Elise's whispering, but when she turned, Elise's mouth would be closed. The forest was practicing them. On the second day, or what felt like the second day, though the phone stubbornly insisted it was always 5, Myra found scratches on her arm. 3 thin lines, parallel like fingernails. She didn't remember being scratched. Elise had them too. Jonah's neck had a bruise shaped like fingertips. That night, if it was night, the light dimmed again too quickly. The clearing became a circle of gray surrounded by black. The chant rose louder, closer, like a crowd gathering outside a door. Jonah stood at the edge of the clearing and screamed into the trees. "What do you want?" The chant paused. A voice answered, soft and careful. "Worms." Jonah backed away, shaking. "No." The voice continued, as if correcting him. "Names, place." Mara covered her ears. "Don't listen." But the voice wasn't just sound. It slipped into thought. It felt like remembering something you never lived. Elise began to rock and whisper again. "I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Mara pulled her close. "For what?" Elise stared into the dark. "For coming, for bringing it new mouths." Mara's throat tightened. "Elise, stop." Elise's face twisted in terror. "I can't stop hearing it." Later, Jonah disappeared. He walked into the forest while Myra and Elise slept, or thought they slept. Myra woke to the sound of footsteps, soft on dirt, and saw Jonah's silhouette moving toward the trees. "Jonah," she hissed. He didn't turn. Mara ran, barefoot, grabbing his wrist at the edge of the clearing. His skin was cold, too cold. His eyes were open but unfocused, staring past her. "I heard Caleb," Jonah whispered. Mara's chest clenched. "Caleb's not here." Jonah's lips trembled. "He said he found the road. He said he's waiting. He said my name like he missed me." Mara looked into the trees. "That's not Caleb." Jonah smiled weakly. Maybe it is. Then he stepped forward. The forest swallowed him with no struggle, no sound. 1 second he was there, the next he was. The trees didn't move. The darkness didn't shift. Jonah was just removed. Mara screamed his name until her throat bled. The forest did not answer. Elise watched with empty eyes, whispering, "You stayed." Mara turned on her. "Don't say that." Elise blinked slowly. "It's what it says." Mara realized, with a sick drop in her stomach, that Elise's voice sounded slightly different, flatter, careful, as if she was repeating words she'd been taught. Mara grabbed Elise's face in her hands, forcing her to look directly at her. "Elise, say my name." Elise frowned like the request was confusing. "Mara," she said after a pause. But the way she said it was wrong, too deliberate, like she was pronouncing it from a written page. Mara's hands shook. "Elise, what's my last name?" Elise stared blankly. Mara swallowed hard. "What's your mom's name?" Elise's eyes filled with tears. She whispered, "I don't know." The forest hummed softly, pleased. On the next loop, another attempt to walk out that ended with the clearing swallowing them back, Mara saw the figure. It stood at the edge of the trees, half hidden by shadow. It wore Caleb's face. Almost. The skin fit wrong, stretched tight like it was too small. The eyes didn't blink. The smile was too even, too rehearsed. "Elise," it said gently, and Elise turned toward it like a flower toward light. Mara yanked her back. "Don't." The Caleb thing tilted its head. "You stayed," it said, voice careful, practiced. Mara screamed, "We stay. We came here. We can leave." The thing smiled wider. "Not after." "After what?" Mara demanded, though she already knew. The thing's eyes flicked to Elise. "After listening." Elise began to walk forward. Mara held on, but Elise's strength surprised her. Thin arms suddenly rigid, pulling with determination that didn't feel like Elise at all. "Mara," Elise whispered, not looking back. "It's okay, it's warm." Mara dragged her down to the dirt, hugging her from behind. No, it's not." Elise's head lolled against Mara's shoulder. Her voice became distant. "I'm tired of being scared." Mara's eyes burned. "I'm scared too, but you're." Elise interrupted softly, almost kindly. "I don't remember what me is." That broke something in Mara. Not in a dramatic way, quietly, like a thread snapping. Her mind scrambled to hold onto memories, names, facts. Jonah laughing at dumb memes, Elise panicking in crowded trains, Caleb cooking pasta at 2 a.m. after a night out. Mara clung to those images like lifelines. But the forest pressed in with its own weight, its own logic. The chant rose again, closer, like a room full of people whispering right outside her skin. Mara began to think in loops. The same sentences repeating, "We have to leave. We can't leave. We have to leave." She started to doubt the order of events. Had they already left once? Had they ever arrived? Had the gate been real? Her phone still read 5 p.m. The number became a joke, then a curse, then a mantra. Sometimes she would look at her hands and feel for a second that they belonged to someone else. Her fingers looked too long, her knuckles too pronounced, her nails like small, pale claws. She would blink and the feeling would fade, but it left a residue of nausea. Elise slept more and more. When she woke, she stared at Mara as if trying to recognize her. "Mara," Elise asked one time, voice small, "are you real?" Mara laughed, a sharp cracking sound that wasn't humor. "Yes." Elise nodded slowly. "Okay." Then she turned her face away, as if that answer didn't matter. On the last day, if it was a day, the forest offered Mara something. A path. It appeared between 2 trees, a narrow opening that hadn't been there before. The ground beyond it looked different. Less bare, more natural, scattered with needles and leaves. It looked like a normal trail. Mara's heart pounded. Elise, look, a way out. Elise didn't move. She sat in the dirt, staring into the clearing like it was the only thing that existed. Mara grabbed her arm. We can go right now." Elise's eyes focused slowly on the path. A faint smile touched her mouth, and Mara felt a surge of relief. Then Elise said calmly, "That's not a path." Mara swallowed. "It is, it's right there." Elise's gaze drifted to the trees. "It's a mouth." Mara froze. The opening did look like a mouth, dark, narrow, framed by trunks like lips. The shadows inside it pulsed faintly, as if breathing. Mara stepped back, her chest tightened. "No." The chant rose, soft and eager. A voice, Caleb's voice, almost perfect now, spoke from the trees. "Mara, come home." Her body responded before her mind could stop it. She took one step toward the opening. Then another. The air grew warmer near it, almost comforting, like the warmth of a house in winter, like safety. Mara's eyes filled with tears. She didn't know why she was crying. She couldn't remember what she was losing, only that it mattered. Behind her, Elise whispered, "You stayed." Mara turned, desperate. "Come with me." Elise's expression was serene now, empty of fear. "I can't." "Why not?" Elise tilted her head the same way the thing had. "Because I'm already part of it." Mara's throat went raw. "No, Elise, please." Elise smiled, small and careful. "Mara," she said, and for a second the name sounded right, like Elise again, like the friend Mara had driven here with. Then Elise's smile widened slightly, too even. Too practiced. Mara backed away, horror flooding her limbs. The forest hummed. The chant swelled. The opening between the trees waited, warm and patient. Mara realized then that the forest didn't need to drag people screaming. It didn't need force. It just needed you to get tired enough to accept anything that sounded like relief. Mara stood at the edge of the mouth and felt the air brush her skin, soft as breath. She tried to remember her last name. It slipped away. She tried to remember Jonah's face. It blurred. She tried to remember why leaving mattered. The thought dissolved like sugar in water. The voice spoke again. Gentle and certain, "You stayed." Mara stepped forward. Darkness closed around her like a door shutting without sound. For a moment, one last sharp moment, she understood what was happening. She understood that the forest was not a place but a hunger, that it didn't eat bodies the way animals did. It ate identity. It ate the shape of a person, the story of them, the meaning of their name. And once it had that, it could wear you like clothing. Then even that understanding was gone. Somewhere far away, in a world where roads connected properly and time moved forward, a website refreshed its listing. Remote cabin, off-grid experience, available now. Perfect for those seeking quiet, isolation, and a true escape. A new review appeared beneath it, posted from an account with no profile picture. 5 stars. So peaceful, you'll never want to leave. In a forest that wasn't on any map, a clearing sat perfectly round. Trees stood in a patient ring. Smoke rose straight up from a fire that didn't need wood. And at the edge of the clearing, shapes practiced smiling. They practiced speaking. They practiced names, softly at first, then confidently. "Mara," one of them said, tasting the sound until it fit perfectly. Then it stepped into the open space, turned its face toward the invisible road, and waited for the next car to arrive. Because the gate always lifted easily, and someone always drove through. And after sunset, someone always stayed.